Hey everyone, I'm Alan Shimel, and welcome to another DevOps Unbound. We have a great panel in store for you today here on DevOps Unbound. Our topic is observability at a broad level. We're going to jump into some of this. Let me first of all introduce you, though. First, I want to introduce you, of course, to my co-host of DevOps Unbound. He's the CEO of Accelerated Strategies Group, CTO here at MediaOps. My friend Mitchell Ashley. Hey, Mitch, welcome.
Alan, thanks. Great to be here.
All righty. Let me introduce you to our panel for today. We have a great panel. I was so happy that this came together. First, coming at us from the mountains of Virginia, by way of the Bronx, right? Ravyn Manuel. Ravyn, why don't you introduce yourself and where you work?
Absolutely. My name is Ravyn Manuel, and I work for the National Museum of African American History and Culture, which is part of the Smithsonian. I am the senior application developer and DevOps engineer. And thanks for not putting me in West Virginia. I appreciate that.
Okay. I don't blame you. Next up, we have the one and only Charity Major, CTO, co-founder at Honeycomb. Charity, little bit about yourself, maybe introduce to the audience.
I am an ops nerd. I've been on call since I was 17, racking hardware. I no longer rack hardware anymore. Hardware doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. Instead, trying to save the world through better observability.
Excellent. And then last but not least, we have Kurt Chase of Tricentis, the Tricentis release team. Kurt, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name's Kurt Chase. I'm currently head of global release management at Tricentis, based in Northern California. Nice to join you all today.
Nice to have you here, Kurt. All right. So team, panel, our topic this week is observability. And given that is the topic, I feel compelled to start with Charity. Because Charity, in many ways, you and the Honeycomb team are responsible for all this buzz around observability. Tell us about it.
Yeah, a little bit. When we started the company a little over 5 years ago, it was not a term that was really used in tech. Now, which is not to say that we invented it, far from it. But it has this long and impressive pedigree in mechanical engineering, specifically like control theory. In control theory, observability is the mathematical dual of controllability. We started building this startup, Honeycomb, and we knew that what we were doing wasn't monitoring, right? We knew that we weren't reactively monitoring. We knew that it was about instrumenting the code, getting from the inside. But for the first 5-6 months, couldn't figure out what to call. It was really hard to figure out how to talk about what we were doing. And then it was mid-July, midway through the first year, when I remember Googling, what is the definition of observability? And when I read it, it's all about, can you understand what's happening on the inside of a system just by looking at it from the outside with no prior knowledge? And light bulb just started going off. I was like, ding, ding, ding. Like, that's what we're trying to build, right? That's exact. Like, if you translate that into software terms, what it means is, can you explain any system state any state that your system can get into without shipping new code to handle that state? Because shipping that code to handle that state implies that you had prior knowledge. So it's all about the unknown unknowns, right? Instead of the known unknowns. So yeah, that's my story.
And you're sticking with it. So
yeah, I think that it really encapsulates, a lot of the problems that people are increasingly having. There's a lot that proceeds from that definition of unknown unknowns, like you need to have high cardinality, high dimensionality, blah, 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 all this stuff. But those are the things that speak to, the problems of microservices and multiple storage systems, et cetera.
I get it. So Ravyn, this is your life, right? How does this observability and what Charity is described as the fact pattern or the problem pattern that she came to call observability? How does that, in your life day to day of what you're doing, how does that kind of manifest itself?
Thanks, Charity, for actually providing a definition, because I was like, okay, are we supposed to define our own meaning of observability? So you've given a baseline, and I like that you said that it's not monitoring, because I can actually feel the nuance. There's a nuance between monitoring and observability. And it's what's really interesting is that that's a problem that I'm trying to solve today at work, because we've got the black boxes, right? So you've got observability, but when you have software, there's a lot of black boxes. You're not supposed to be asking what's going on inside the code, because you're not supposed to know what's going on inside the code. But when you get like you put a signal in. I was in the military, so I did electronic repair. So you put the signal in and you don't get the right signal out, but you've got a black box.
Yep.
Like, how do you know what went wrong there if you can't actually observe what's going on inside of there? It's one thing to know the state of the software when you are the developer. So as a developer, yes, I know. But when it comes to being the product owner or the project manager or a stakeholder, and you're trying to figure out why is this doing this? Or this is not what I wanted, actually, is how that would come from that end, is that's not what I wanted. So how to get the stakeholders to get what they want when you can't actually tell, like I can't tell what the code from my coworker is doing. Right. So in a way, observability is it is abstracted from monitoring, because monitoring is telling you what it's doing, but it isn't telling you the state. And so it's a problem that I'm trying to solve actually today.
I was going to jump in here and say, from my experience, although monitoring, logging, reporting, alerting, they're not observability. I think they are fundamental foundational pieces that you have to have in place. You can start observability without any of them, but I've found that the more you can get your monitoring, reporting, and even get some alerting going, it allows you to then start observing the system. And for me, it's what I know at Splunk, and now here again at Tricentis, I'm really trying to connect all the pieces, because it's not just about the applications, but I find that some of the DevOps engineers, they really help with observability, especially the ones that are super inquisitive, and they don't just, when a result appears or something happens, they don't just take it at face value. They're inquisitive, they dig in, they try and find the root cause. And I think that's key with observability, is taking all the monitoring, reporting, alerting you have, taking the feedback you have from your customers, all of that comes together, I think, to really help you start to define those unknown unknowns that Charity brought up. I think it becomes very complicated. And then I think I'd love to talk about how AI and machine learning now can start to learn some of these things, because I think we get really good at repeatable incidences, observing those and then accounting for those in our systems. But it's the unknown unknowns. How do we deal with those? That's the real interesting part to me nowadays, for sure.
It is, I think, the interesting part. And I also think that AI ops is mostly bullshit, and it will be for the foreseeable future.
For a while, I agree,
But I wanted to circle back to what you said about, logging and everything, which is, so there's a technical definition for observability, which has to do with high cardinality and all this stuff. And then there is just understanding your systems, right? Yeah. And I absolutely agree. Like, you need some alerting, you need some monitoring. I think that the question is it log files? Is it metrics? Yeah. That's kind of irrelevant. They're just data, right? What's important is, can you understand what's happening in your system when you need to understand it? And I do think it's important to sort of differentiate the technical definition of observability from just the tendency that we have to say observing things, because there's a very rich and mature and well-established set of best practices for monitoring, which are in many cases completely mirror opposite from the best practices for observability. Like, for example, with monitoring, it's like, for years we've been saying, you should not have to stare at graphs all day. The system should inform you when you need to, when there's something wrong, right? It's super, canonical best practice. But with observability, it's exactly the opposite. We're saying that, most problems that happen are so subtle that you need to be looking for them, right? You can't page everyone at the threshold. Like, you would drive them nuts if you're like, oh, every little thing is going wrong, bing, bing, bing. You drive people nuts and they would quit, right? But when you're an engineer, when you're working on this endpoint, or when you're trying to solve this problem, you should absolutely be looking through, asking questions, iterating on them, and looking for the trails in your observability tool at that very fine-grained level.
I agree.
So, I hear what all three of you said, and it's funny, how everyone brings their own baggage to this issue. No, it's not. Don't be sorry. I love it. Here's I think fundamentally, for those people out here who are watching this home, I got a lot of people out here who are DevOps people, who are ops folks, SREs, cyber folks, and their heads are spinning. Because I think there's a little bit of what Kurt said to them, which is they don't do it. They do a shitty job monitoring. Quite frankly, we don't do a great job of it. People started throwing this AI ops word around, and there are a lot of companies raising a crap ton of money around, their AI ops stuff. And I never really understood what was real about it. And many times, right, it just sounded like another word for monitoring to me, but whatever, there is no AI in it. But, and now, look, over the last year and a half, 2 years, maybe we've seen observability come up here, and they don't get the difference. Ravyn, I think you do, because quite frankly, your black box analogy with electronics in the military, that is, you got to figure out what the unknowns are from the unknowns. It's not just getting all these signals which are known, and then recognizing patterns and putting some automation behind it. That's not observability. I'm sorry, right? That not in my mind anyway. So I think number one is we need to clearly define, and Charity, you guys, you are a major kind of evangelist for this. What is observability versus AI ops versus ALM, which is before AI ops, right? And so forth. And there are SREs who are living this, and DevOps teams who are living this every single day out here, right? Who haven't got their heads around it. Ravyn, I always look to you as someone though who gets it. Where do you fit on that? Where do you kind of see it on? Let's say there's a scale of ALM, AI ops, blah blah blah, observability. What do you think?
I feel like I would be most close to observability, and because again, anything with ops in it, when you start doing like DevSecOps and DevOps, like all of those ops are just become marketing terms after a while, right? But observability is because it's not quite tangible. It's actually more real because it's real because it speaks to exactly what's going on when you're trying to get continuous improvement, because you need metrics, right? To show and prove that you're doing continuous improvement. But how do you get there? Like, what is it? What are the steps to get you there? How are you alerted that you're not improving or that you are going backwards? And so when I feel for me, as far as observability, I'm at the cusp, because I didn't actually know that the word existed until I found out about the talk. Like, I didn't know that it had been defined. So it's really cool to know that I can now call it observability. It's because it's that thing that there isn't a tool to actually help me know what it is that I'm looking at all the time. Not all the time, right? There are some tools that help me some of the time, but not all the time. And it's the times that I don't know, that's when we are stuck, because it could be impacting the way my system performance or the team's performance.
Charity, I think you might have a customer there. It sounds like they need a tool.
I think that like one of the key differentiators here between observability and AI ops and stuff is what it tries to center. With observability, like we are not, the AI ops are like, we'll tell you what to look at. You don't need to understand your systems. We'll understand your system for you. We'll tell you what to look at. We'll tell you what it means. We'll tell you what's important. With observability, it's the opposite. I think that we need to look to solutions that let computers do what computers are good at, and let humans do what humans are good at. Computers are good at crunching lots of numbers, but they can't attach meaning to something, right? Only human beings can attach meaning to something. If I see a big old spike of red, that could be good, that could be bad. You don't know. Like, there is no meaning until a human has attached them to it. And with AI ops, like, AI ops only really works with the corpus of data that you're training on doesn't change. So if you're actually shipping new software every day, you're fucking up your corpus. Like, this is kind of incompatible with modern software development. I have many thoughts and feelings on AI ops. God bless them. But mostly I think that what they're trying to do is take the humans out of the driver's seat. And I understand why, because, C-levels, CTOs, CIOs, whatever, this is something that kind of blew my mind when I realized it a couple of years ago. They trust vendors over their own people, right? Their employees come and go. Vendors are forever. So whenever a vendor comes along and is like, give me tens of millions of dollars, your people don't have to hold all of the wisdom in their heads. You could replace them. They're fungible. The tool will tell you that tool will be the source of truth. And I just fundamentally reject. I've never seen that work well. I think it's a shitty way to treat your people. And I would prefer to take the approach.
And I would not agree with that statement, quite honestly. I've had leads that aren't like that.
All right. Mr. Vice President, I'm talking. Sorry, go ahead.
And then using our tools to make them better, right? To enhance them, to give them a better sense of like where they sit in time and space and the history and what's happened before and what they should be wearing grooves in the system as they use it and as their team uses it. So I think that it's just that if you're centering the person, observability, and if you're centering it's AI. Sorry, go ahead, Kurt.
It's okay, Kurt. Your turn.
In my experience, the leads I've had, I'm a senior director level now. It was the same at Splunk. I did not encounter that where my leads trusted vendors more than myself or the people on my team. That I was surprised to hear that, quite honestly, Charity. I have not experienced that.
That shocked me too. It's not universal, but it's there. It exists quite a lot.
Yeah, that's too bad to hear. That is seriously wrong. And that's going to go against everything we need to accomplish internally.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun attracting great people with that mental model.
Yeah. And the other thing I'd love to hear your opinion on this, Charity. We have very complicated systems we're running, the source code management, the build systems, the agents. I've found that it always is very helpful to distill it down into discrete parts. Try not to boil the ocean at once. Let's start with the source code management system. How are we observing that? What are we doing here? And would you suggest that's a great way for people to get going? I mean, when you try and look at everything, you have to look at everything for sure. But to get started, it seems like find some of the most important pieces. Source code management is a great one, the crown jewels. What's your suggestion there for getting started? And
source code management is important, but shouldn't almost ever be in the critical production path. Mm-hmm. And when people are rolling something out, I always advise them to find something don't waste your time like instrumenting, adding observability to like some backwater to your system. Like, find the thing that you're trying to understand and fix now. Find the thing that's broken. Find the thing that's causing you pain, right? Mm-hmm. Because it should be an order of magnitude better at answering your questions. Observability should be than monitoring. I honestly don't think you could look someone in the eye and ask them to switch up what they're doing and to use something else unless you can tell them it's going to be an order of magnitude better than what they've got now, right? Because the costs of transition are so high. But like with observability, you shouldn't be able to go from, instead of just like these aggregates where it's like, well, I see a spike, but I can't tell what it means or how they're different. With observability, you should be able to go exactly those rows. In which ways are those events different from all of the baseline events? And very quickly go, I have a much richer view of my system now. And once you've got that, you should be able to explain way more about what's going on. So like, we see this all the time when people are when they're rolling out Honeycomb, right? They roll it out to a service and they're like, oh God, there are problems there. Did you know that this was broken? Oh, there are. And we're like, yeah. But you're just picking up the rug, right? Like, it's been there. It's been that way for as long as you know, right? And they'll pick up another service and problems. I'm like, yeah, but these problems have existed. You just had no idea because we were dealing with time series aggregates, right? So I feel like the way to pick up momentum, the way to incentivize people to like get excited about this is to like look for the biggest pain point in your system and attack that with observability.
That's great advice.
Charity, I question, can observability actually take into account process? Because you're talking about like if there's something wrong in the system itself, but sometimes the thing that's wrong with the system is the process.
It's not about process. And you're totally right. That's often, that is not something that you should ever ignore, right? A lot of the biggest problems are process problems, but observability is not the tool for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good to know too, because, you know, quite frankly, and Mitchell knows this too, we live in a silver bullet world where people think the latest shiny trinket is the cure-all.
Everything, you should run
You
around.
know, observability, it's not going to cure COVID either. But
and that was a point I was trying to make initially. I think I said it wrong. It's not that monitoring, reporting, logging are foundational. They're complementary. You kind of need them all.
Yeah.
You know, if you're running modern stacks, I said that incorrectly at the start. It's not foundational. They're so, you need them alongside each other.
they're adjacent. They're not.
Yeah,
they're not.
Absolutely.
It's not a pyramid per se.
Exactly.
I think it's part of your stack. You know,
Yes.
horizontally.
Yes.
Mitch, we haven't. Go ahead, Kurt, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I found with especially new individuals and new people to the DevOps team and the DevOps world, getting them involved in the monitoring and saying, hey, this is how we start monitoring. That's a great place to start. Like it's almost entry level for observability. If you, I'd love your opinion on that, Charity, too.
I really think that everyone who writes and ships software should be on call for their code. Like,
Yeah.
no matter how junior or how senior, software ownership, right?
Yep.
And so yes, that's very empowering. I think when you show them how to find the trail from the alert that's paging them, trace it all the way through the system and fix it. Like that's something that as engineers, like we feed on that. It's exciting to get to know how to run your ship better. Yes, absolutely.
Well, but so you know what? Mitchell and I started a company, or two co-founders of a company called Still Secure 20 years ago. And that was one of the things. Mitchell ran the engineering team, and that was one of the things he instituted, I remember, was that every developer had to take a turn on the help support desk, like level one, answer the phone, hello, Mr. Customer, you know, and try to explain it, because they had to answer the alert. And even when they weren't on that level one, our escalation procedure was, if it went to level 2 or 3, it was the developer who did the level 2 and 3
will say
support.
this. Yes, and I do think every engineer should be on call for their work. But you have to couple that with it's management's job to make sure that doesn't suck, that it isn't life impact, that it doesn't just like kill you with pages over. It is management's absolute fucking responsibility to make sure that they're given the time to away from project work to like fix these problems so that they don't recur, so that they get enough sleep. Like I think it's reasonable to ask any engineer to be woken up 2 or 3 times a year for their code. That's it. Because more than that, you're burning people out hardcore.
You know, Charity,
done
Ravyn, I have a question.
I
I have a question I'd love to ask all of you. I'm thinking about, observability has been elevated, right? Because of, in part, the world that we're living in, software architecture's changing. We're dealing with microservices, all these much smaller things that are interconnected to make software. And at the same time, as we're changing at the pace of which we release software, not only is it unknown unknowns, it's a change. It's like a river, Ravyn, you're in the river of the changing software, right? So you're trying to understand all of those things at the same time. It seems like it's the right time for observability to be the thing to be working on, because ops has to be elevated to the same level of the same kind of architecture and processes that we're using across the into the life cycle of software. You agree with that or not? It seems to me we're at the right place right now.
I feel like the first wave of DevOps transformation was all about ops people, learn to write code. We're all like, okay.
Yeah.
But I feel like the pendulum has swung. I think now it's about, okay, software engineers, your turn.
You got to do
Trying
ops.
to learn to write operable services and to learn to maintain them and be on call for them. And because what microservices has done, like all of that complexity and logic used to be bundled up in the app, right? The app. And now it's like been thrown to the four directions of the map. And what that means is that so much of like understanding and operating your application has been pushed into the realm of operations and systems, right? It used to be that if all else failed, you could attach a debugger to your app and just step through it, see what was happening, right? Well, you can't do that anymore now because the process died and jumped to another service and another service. And part of like the way that we instrument for observability is all about packing up the context of the application and shipping it along with it from hop to hop, one event per request per service, so that you can slice and dice and reason about your systems in the way that you used to be able to.
Doing that really changes the design. I'm thinking Alan's story about what I did back at Still Secure. What prompted that was when a customer called in and said, I'm sitting in and we're using your product, and this dialog box popped up and it says an unknown error occurred. And that's all it says. Like, what do I do? Well, nobody knows what to do with that. So we all decided, look, everybody does support in that case, right? Everybody does ops. And that changed. Okay, we have to figure this out. And suddenly that was the problem of how do we make this easier to support and easier to resolve issues with. So it does affect behavior and design a product.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think microservices will actually do good for observability, because if you do microservices correctly, right, then each service is atomic. It does one thing and one thing only, and it does that thing good, right? So if the unknown is now taken out of it because you know exactly what this thing is supposed to do.
Out of it.
In my ideal world, it is. There are no more unknowns.
Yeah.
In Ravyn's world, exactly.
Yeah. But I'm going to tell you something. The flip side to this, though, too, with microservices, and I think we're starting to see this now, is can you have too many microservices running? Is the complexity load in there such that observability almost becomes meaningless or impossible?
I don't know that complexity could ever really be created. No, observability is not meaningless. It's your only hope to understand the shit if that's what you've done to yourself. But like complexity can only be moved around, right? It's just a question of trade-offs, like which set of trade-offs. Some people have gone whole hog on microservices, and then they found the edges to those design patterns, But
what I was going to say, what I find challenging is both at Splunk. Autodesk was interesting. So to your point, Alan, we used to make engineers buy bagels. You break things, you have to buy bagels. And so we had a lot of bagels brought in. But both at Splunk and here at Tricentis, we have a world where we're supporting large enterprise applications and delivery of enterprise apps. We're also obviously all the microservices, and trying to apply these techniques across the board is very interesting, very challenging.
Oh yeah, there's no one size fits all.
There's not. And almost to the point you made, Ravyn, observability almost has to be customized for what you're observing. I haven't had a chance to run Honeycomb yet, but for me, my experience has been there's always those little idiosyncrasies about how we run our apps, how we deliver our software.
Auto instrumentation. No one else can do it for you, right? It could get you started, it could give you a boost, but at the end of the day, somebody's got to fucking understand your software and roll that into your instrumentation. Right. Nobody else can do that for you, let alone machines.
And that's where with AI ops, I won't say it's complete shit. I think there is some value there. Some of it is just about automating common occurrences, and maybe that's not valuable,
But the value of an AI ops
I think there is.
Isn't AI, but they're just using that to raise like lots of VC money.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Then we're completely agreed. Like, I have an AI too.
No, but and you're right. AI is a money term, but ML ops is something that's caught on a bit, right? More than AI ops, and I think that's really what's the heart of it, which was to recognize repeatable patterns or recognize patterns.
Although I
can
would
respond
still
to.
challenge. I think in far too many cases, people are reaching for the complicated solution instead of fixing it at the start. Like they're like, oh, I've got like 50 gazillion emails, and all of that disk space, so I need AI to solve it. Instead of turning off the fucking emails and setting up a different kind of alert or some like automatic failover, it's just like, is this really a problem we need to solve, or could we solve it better by just not having it?
There is that, right? Do we need to solve and I think not Ravyn, Charity, you were getting at it before. Do we need to solve every problem?
Is it the
Right.
most important problem? Is this going to be the biggest bang for our buck?
Yep.
And
I mean, we used to
gotta
have
say,
it.
red diffs
just-
are the best diffs. Like senior engineers write software, but very senior engineers delete software.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, when Mitchell and I were doing the security company, we had a product, Vulnerability Assessment and Management, VAM. Internally, we called it the bad news generator because that's what it was. It was the bad news generator. And the
Just
problem
created
was,
work.
we would go to an organization like Ravyn's and it would pop up, a few thousand vulnerabilities. And the
Like,
security or the ops people would be like, what am I going to do? And don't worry
Exactly.
about 95% of them. Let's just worry about the top 5%, right? And it was like it was employment insurance. It was because there would always be more vulnerabilities for us to find next year. But that being said, it really was a case where you're not going to fix everything. We don't have the time to fix everything, even
And
if
it's
we
not really
wanted
doing a
to.
great job of giving you differentiation, letting you know what's really important and what's just noise, right? So much of
Yeah.
these tools, they just give you so much noise, and it's almost worse than nothing at all.
Well, that's why it was the bad news generator. People used to, so Mitchell got the lucky part of designing it. I had to go sell it. Right? That was
Well,
much
I
harder.
remember the,
You're always
the day
harder.
the guy from the federal government called and said, this thing is spamming everybody in the
Yeah,
defense
with all
department.
these
How do I
vulnerabilities.
turn it
Because
off?
we had this automated workflow before
That
we
was a
had cool
great
terms like AI and ML.
funny.
But it is hard, guys. We're coming down the home stretch here. We probably only have 5 minutes or so left. I wanted to let's look forward now, right? I'm big into looking forward these days. I'm hoping we're going to do conferences in person again. We're going to. I don't know if we'll go back to our offices, but what's next for observability? How does this continue to evolve?
What's next is, I think, really wrapping traces in as a first-class tool. So that right now, too many people are like, buy one tool for metrics, one tool for logs, one tool for observability, another tool for trace. They're spending to store their data again at every time. And it's worse than that because you can't actually seamlessly break down and chain events. So you're just copy pasting this ID into that tool or hoping that this spike, because it seems to line up time-wise, is actually these in the logs. You should be paying to store this data once, and you should be able to flip back and forth between modes, right? Are you slicing and dicing? Are you doing aggregations at read time? Are you zooming in? Are you zooming out? Or are you flipping back so you can view it as a waterfall, by time? I think that observability tools like us and Lightstep, which are the only two observability tools out there by my technical definition. Although I will say, I do think that this might be the year that begins to change. I know that so many of the big players have been working as fast as they can for years on the back end. They're trying to catch up to where we sit technically faster than we can catch up to where they sit in terms of the business. So.
And I like that you said that. I'm sorry, Kurt, that
No, go ahead,
I just
Ravyn.
wanted to say
No,
Charity,
Ravyn,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
About tracing, because that's actually the solution that I am actually looking for, that I've been looking for.
It's got a lot of rough edges,
organizations. Yes,
but there are lots
to
of
be able
problems you
to
can't
follow
solve any other way.
exactly. So I feel good that I'm doing it inherently, I know what I'm supposed to be doing,
You're
and
on the right path.
I've actually found the way to do that. But yeah, tracing I also think is the way to go. That is the only way you're going to be able to know. Because it's taking you from point A to point B to point C to point D, and you'll be able to see that all. And there will be no unknowns.
Oh, honey, you keep saying that. I don't think it means anything to
Let me
me.
live my dream. That's what he just said. Let me live my little dream.
Kurt, what do you got?
Yeah, well, where my mind goes to in the future is, what are we doing in the education system to really disseminate this information, how modern software is developed, how we monitor it. And then also observability is such a loaded term because I know at Splunk, they would consider observability something much different for, running, a SOC and things like that. So I think I mean, at its core, observability is what it is, but how it's implemented for different disciplines and how they use it. I think companies would definitely take exceptions with some of the things we've said here and what observability means to them, and I would just say, keep that in mind that it is a huge field. And I think we're going to see further improvements. I love the tracing, and being able to have that in your tool set would be fantastic.
Charity, final thoughts before we wrap?
Oh, I am just enjoying the fact that so many people are so interested in this that they'll show up and argue about it all the time. So
It's all good. Hey, you know what? It's a living. Mitchell, as usual, I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, I've learned two things today. Don't call my tool an observability tool or an AI tool unless it really meets the definition. I'm going to get crucified. No, no. What? I mean, I love this conversation. I learned a ton. I always do when we have these. What's so cool to me is that we're talking about operations, and we're talking about, this part of our world, and we're not talking about better ticketing systems. We're talking about really meaty, interesting things that help us do our jobs better, do a better job for the company, for the customer. That's exciting to me. It's just really cool. I enjoy it very much.
Mm-hmm.
Join us for our next show where we'll be talking about better ticketing systems. No, we won't.
No.
And what argument did I miss? I wasn't
No. It's all good. You know what? I enjoy having really bright, smart people who are willing to, express their opinions. And when I knew we had this panel was the lineup, I knew there was going to be no shortage of opinions, nor be backing down.
We're going to call the next one the observability mix up.
Right.
we're going to have to call it like observability AI.
I still want to see that
AI observability.
We need to see the sticker Charity was holding up. We need to see that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we never got to that. Yes.
We have to see that.
I've got release is not deployed.
You got a lot of them here.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I love that.
Right.
Deploy on Fridays.
You know what? You used to be able to get these things at conferences. Now we're used to showing them on Zoom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Now, perhaps this is a good day to deploy.
Maybe.
Okay, yeah, perhaps.
It's Friday. It's not a good day.
That Friday's
That's the one. Right
And there it is. I deploy from CROD.
That's the one to end on right there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Beautiful.
We're going to wrap it. Hey, you've watched DevOps Unbound. It's sponsored by Tricentis. Many thanks to them for sponsoring. Just wanted to quickly mention Kurt is from Tricentis. Charity is from Honeycomb, and it's honeycomb.io. Go check them out.
Generous free tier.
And a very generous free trip. Ravyn, you can start playing with it now and see if it's something that gives you tracing and so forth. Mitchell, thanks for joining us. We'll be back. Actually, we are back with a roundtable next, which will be open to the public. Looking forward to having you on for that. But until then, this is Alan Shimel for DevOps Unbound. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see you soon.